Week 4 recap, and I will say for the first time ever, I sent the recap over to Caesar, and I said, you know what, don't send it out, I'm going to do better than that. The reason I say that is I fasted today for a Jewish holiday, and I tried to do it right after, and my energy just wasn't there. Also, I kind of realized I'm a pretty critical person. I was listening to myself, I'm like, you know what, why don't I focus more on the positive? So, two things are going to be changing. Not that much, though, honestly. It's probably going to be almost exactly the same, but I'm going to try and be make sure that the positives that I just take for granted, I vocalize them. Just like in life, like give the people you love a compliment. I want to give the people I love more compliments. Also, I dropped something. Also, I wanted to give more structure. So we're going to, instead every week, to give a little bit more structure, we're going to go from biggest blowouts to closest games in that order, which also builds up to the best matchups, especially given that last week there were some really good matchups. Also, if you don't watch the full recap, which would be insane, at least you could gauge where you're going to be. Like if you're in a tight game, you'll be near the end. So with that being said, let's break it down. The first, and I've already done the analysis of this too, so outside of just looking before the recap, now I actually really have spoken about every team, so hopefully I know what I'm talking about. We're going to start with my favorite team, Team Glory Hole. You'll hear me saying it all season. They started 1-2, but I said don't fret, and that's because you should not fret. Glory Hole has a fantastic team, and yes, they did it again without the one, the only Alvin Kamara. Dalvin Cook was expected to be the RB1 that carried you. He wasn't. I'm still not scared about Dalvin Cook. The volume's insane, so I think that he's gonna show you the value that you're expecting. The real surprise here is Rashad Penny, and advanced stats are really showing Rashad Penny to be a very solid running back. The only doubt I have about Rashad Penny is if he's not in a game script where it's competitive, are they still going to lean on him? If Seattle can either be competitive or involve Rashad Penny in games where a game script is negative, I mean, this is a really solid group. Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and now you add in Rashad Penny to the mix. Just really, really solid depth. And you get J.K. Dobbins as well. I like the first three a little bit more, but Dobbins is going to make an argument if he keeps getting touchdowns. I didn't love the yardage for J.K. That's why I don't put him in the top three. But my goodness, you are deep everywhere. I think this team is super, super solid, and they go to 2-2. Living Yoda, a tough loss. 72 points is a huge gap, but 124 isn't horrific. The bad news, of course, Cordero Patterson, 10.3 points. A guy you, of course, would want to lean on a ton, especially given your current injury issues. You just got Kittle back, but he's obviously not performing super well. DeAndre Swift out. The good thing for Team Living Yoda, this is actually ironic. I think this is the team I projected to be first and last place. Now that I'm thinking about it, but you're going to get DeAndre Swift back, and Damian Harris is playing pretty well. So the Patterson injury sucks only because you were really starting to fill this team out really effectively. And you add on to that a wide receiver group that I'm high on because I have Devontae as my wide receiver 1 and Cooks as my wide receiver 3. Again, it's not the strongest wide receiver group because I view the Cooks as like a really good guy to have as your third guy. You do have Lockett in there, and I wouldn't be starting Palmer, who was in your flex, even though Keenan was out. Don't love him as a start. But even though I don't love the depth, and even though the injury issues are an issue, I will say, despite this being my least favorite team, Living Yoda is going to be competitive. As long as you have Josh Allen and some solid pieces, which you do, I could see a lot of things happening. I don't see playoffs happening, but I could see a lot of things happening. Next matchup. By the way, projection had Team Livin' La Vida Yoda winning that game. So am I smarter than projections? I don't know. Maybe. I am not. Pain Train, we will get to later because we're going in order, and I reminded myself. So the next biggest blowout, I guess, but it doesn't really get to blowouts here, which is good because in my league it's always blowouts. This league had some competitive games. This one a little bit less so. Another game, I think almost every game the projected winner lost. This time it's Untouchable. It's going to 3-1 with the 148.6 to 119.56 win over. We went with Jared. Untouchable is getting a huge game from Brady. Again, not my favorite fantasy quarterback, but the struggles were not going to remain the same. He's going to be passing the ball a ton, especially against a Kansas City team where the game script will be trailing. That's the good news. The bad news is, of course, what happened at the injury. Wow, my post-fasting brain is just horrific. But after the injuries to Jonathan Taylor, which will only hopefully be 1 week, but then Javonte Williams, who was first season, this team was starting to really make some noise. The fan base was going nuts. Everyone was really getting excited about what's going on with Captain Krupp. But unfortunately, despite going 3-1, there's these injuries are just awful luck, man. So first, let me say good job, because I'm starting with compliments. Good job. You got some really great value guys, Cortland Sutton, Hollywood Brown, to add into some power guys that we knew would be good, Jonathan Taylor, Javonte Williams. And then on the bench, Jeff Wilson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So that leads to the next point as my second congratulations is you're going to still have startable guys in there. So Untouchables, it's not panic mode. It's not like if you're playing them next week, it's like, oh, I'm going to crush them. You do get a huge break. But when Jonathan Taylor gets back, when you are able to plug in Clyde, in the short term, you're able to plug in Jeff Wilson. I think it's still a very good team. 3-1, obviously probably, in my opinion, the weakest 3-1 team just given the injuries. But well-managed team. I'm sure they'll find a way to manage around this. Team, we went with Jared with the loss, going to 2-2. Proving that he's not really in that conversation also because of some unfortunate injuries. This time it's David Montgomery that he plugged in with a second Jets running back. I'm a Jets fan. I would not play 2 Jets running back. That's literally insane. It's the definition of insanity is both doing something over and over and expecting different results. That's the classic saying. And the second one I'm going to add in is starting a Jets running back in general, let alone 2. Let me backtrack by saying Breece Hall is looking like the real deal. We're excited about him, but fantasy-wise, I think he'll be decent. I think there's a little bit too much hype, but I think he'll be solid. He'll have big weeks. Solid. Michael Carter, no longer startable, borderline droppable, was dropped in my 12-team league. So teaming with Jared, you're probably going to get Montgomery back in the next couple weeks. Until then, it's a little bit of a tougher situation. You could plug Fournette into the RB, but then the next best player for flex is Darrell Henderson or Robert Woods. Really not great guys to start. So you're at 2-2. I think this is the definition of a 2-2 team. I think if Lamar continues to be Lamar, Jamar goes back to being Jamar. Wow, that rhymes. I should create a rap about that. No, I'm not going to try. You have Cooper Kupp already there. I think there's a lot of pieces here to do damage. Next week is probably going to be a week that if you could win, it's like, okay, we went with Jared's legit. They're probably going to steamroll their way to the playoffs, and they're the next best team after Glory Hole, in my opinion. But with the injury, of course, having that weak spot and any other injury could expose another weak spot, there's more concern there. Rashad Bateman also banged up. Not as significant because a lesser injury, but also he's probably your weakest starter. And Darren Waller, of course, performing poorly. But I still think very, very positive things about we went with Jared. So good luck bouncing back to over 500 next week. Here's where it gets exciting. 3 pretty close matchups. First up, Cesar Trons against El Granas, 154-141. Cesar Trons goes to 3-1. I have to assume this is the Cesar that I am in contact with. If there's another Cesar, there's no way. There's just simply no way. It's such a unique name. Great name, by the way. Again, compliments all the way around. I see some familiarity with my team to start off with Kyler Murray, and I think you're going to continue to see him be a top 6 fantasy quarterback. Hopefully we won't see many weeks like last week, and fortunately you avoided it this week. And that was part of a full team effort into really everyone contributing. I mean, you add in Mixon getting 17 because of the volume, Nick Chubb getting 27 because of his talent and volume, T. Higgins getting 30 despite the slight injury scare. The concerns here are with depth, and it's not that you don't have depth. In fact, Miles Sanders on the bench is insane, and insane really more so in the fact that he needs to be starting. But the question is, who do you take out here? In the flex this week, you had Zeke, and I think that is the guy to bench at this point. I'm curious where you go with, because I don't know Zeke, Miles Sanders. If I did a ranking, I think I'd put them right next to each other, because I think Miles Sanders is being a little bit overhyped now, and Zeke is being a little bit underrated now. But I still think I would still expect you go Miles Sanders, but we'll keep an eye on that. I think the other story here is wide receiver. I mean, Duvernay, I've been saying, I think in this recap, even though he's leading the league in touchdowns, I don't think it's sustainable. There's too many targets there. If Bateman's out, I get it a little bit more. But with Mark Andrews, with Bateman, I just don't love Duvernay I shouldn't say run first offense anymore, but heavy running offense. And then Gabe Davis, clearly injury concern. So your wide receiver group is the one to monitor. If you could get production out of your wide receiver group, Caesar, I think you're going to also be one of those teams that could steamroll. But the way I see it right now, I see that as your weak point, and I still see you as a playoff team, but how far can you get? Well, we're going to have to see. Congratulations on the win. Well managed, well earned. Let's see what happens with what you do with all the depth, in that you have a lot of options, not necessarily like stellar, but you do have a lot of viable options. And if you manage correctly, I could see you going pretty far. El Granas, less success because they're not getting a lot out of guys that you'd expect a lot more from. Jalen Hurts, 12.4, but I'm not concerned about him. Najee, 8.4. I'm still not concerned about him. I was lower on him this season, so I definitely expected not incredible numbers like some people did, but I wasn't this low on him, meaning I think that given the volume, he's going to be better than this. I think we've seen him his floor, I think with the quarterback change, he should be a lot better. James Robinson leading the league in like no yard gain runs, so I'm starting to be a little bit concerned about that. Also, given that ETN is probably going to get a bigger role every week. But with that being said, the wide receiver group we've spoken about being very solid, and TJ Hawkinson getting you 35 points. So I think it was 35 points, 44 points in this league. Are you full? Okay, anyway, literally just simply remarkable. I do think this is another team that has a lot of options. AJ Dillon, Dameon Pierce, both on the bench. That's a head scratcher. I would have never gone Garrett Wilson over Dameon Pierce. Hindsight's 2020, but I don't understand that. I even think Dameon Pierce at this point is a better running back than James Robinson. So more of a compliment to you that you have the options, but I'm going to expect to see some mixing up at each position because you do have those options as well. It always surprised me in the difference between 10 and 12 teams leagues because you guys all really have pretty solid benches. But the two teams I just reviewed, I think, really do have some of the stronger benches in the league. And that will bring us to our next closest game, Paco Libre against Team the Chairman. Only 3 points separating. That wasn't the closest in the league. No, because Paco Libre does go to 3-1, 140. I've seen Mariota being started in a lot of the leagues I'm looking at. My league, my second league, the other league I'm recapping. I don't know what I'm missing, but I don't see him as a viable starter. You did, and that was the only miss. Everything else you're doing, kudos to you. Debo is my favorite wide receiver in the NFL, 27.7 points. CMC showing he's still CMC, probably going to be worth where he was drafted. Fantastic job. Kelsey showing that he's the best tight end. And then Chris Olave. This is where I'll admit, I wouldn't be starting Chris Olave up to this point just yet. I haven't seen enough, and this might have been the week where I might have seen enough. Only 4 catches, but he gets a touchdown, 67 yards. Just the fact that he's so consistent at this point. I mean, in fantasy, it's hard to be that consistent. He's showing that his targets are here to stay, and it shows that you just have another really, really solid piece. Josh Jacobs on the bench, 42 points. Obviously, the huge miss. He's my RB2. I would never have benched him, especially for Antonio Gibson. But because you made so many good calls that just got you the win, I'm not going to be overly critical here. I think you do have to take another look at quarterback. I think Josh Jacobs has to find his way into that offense, and I think this is a very solid team. For Team the Chairman, this is where you look more at like, oh, what could have I done different to get the win? I'm also not going to be so hard on you. We're actually going to start on the bench here. The only guy who was really kind of you had 3 guys that were startable, but one guy that technically would have gotten you the win, Godwin, I would not have started. He's so banged up. You could have gotten 0 from him. Not worth it. Good news for you that he's involved, but wasn't really startable this week. I agree. Etienne and Kareem Hunt probably deserve to be considered as starters, but you had Jamal Williams filling in, so you really didn't need to do it. You had Eckler and Jamal as your RBs. And then in your flex, you went with Romeo Doubs, who's 12.2. You know, you got what you are looking for from him. So I have no blame to point here. I think, yes, Jamal won't be that RB long term. And then, yes, your wide receiver 2 and 3 are both very volatile guys that I usually warn against and I stay away from personally, Deontay and Devontae Smith, as much as I possibly can. But again, top-heavy team. Eckler showing he's still that guy. Mark Andrews, the tight end, too. There's pieces here. You are a 2-2 team. I think this is the strength of a 2-2 team. I think there's going to be around a 500 team, and we'll stay tuned to see if that's the case. Let me take note that I'm predicting the Chairman will end up exactly 500. I want to hold myself to. I need to start holding myself to every prediction. All right, so my prediction: Chairman will end up 500. I think Glory Hole is going to win the league, and I'm not going to dun chain anyone just yet. Do you have no 0-4 teams, actually? Okay, anyway. So, finally, the last game was the best one because Pain Train gets a much-needed win to go to 1-3. First win of the season, wins 148 to 0.48 to 147 over Team El Captain. A lot to discuss here. I mean, Pain Train, obviously, every decision you look at here and you're happy you made it. There are sure some weak points, but Khalil Herbert coming in with Montgomery's injury came at the perfect time. 12.1 is what you kind of wanted to flex, especially given the Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas injuries. This team's going to go as those 2 wide receivers go. I think you're going to need at least Keenan to come back and perform like that wide receiver stud, because if you have Curtis Samuel and Juju both starting for you, you're going to usually have a weaker wide receiver group than most other teams. I think healthy, your team is sick. A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas would make a fantastic wide receiver group. Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, fantastic running back group, and Burrow, fantastic quarterback. So, yeah, I guess my summary is that I have no issue with your team. I think Zach Ertz is going to be the starter, I'm assuming, moving forward. That's a surprising start going Conklin. But no issues with your team. Obviously, you made the right decisions this week, getting yourself the first win. You have the talent to get some more wins. Going to stay tuned. It's always tough to come back from 0-3, but you're on your way. I guess I'd predict right now it's going to be tough to make the playoffs, but I think your team's strong enough to potentially make a run. It's going to be close if you do. Team El Captain, really tough loss to go to 1-3. Crazy how 1-3 could either look so good if you're a Pain Train saying, hey, my season's still alive, or so bad if you're El Captain saying, damn, 1-3 is a bad record, because it unfortunately is. But again, top-heavy team, Patty Mahomes, Saquon Barkley, Justin Jefferson. Every position has a stud. Even Njoku's a really good tight end option. And Justin Tucker, my favorite kicker. Buffalo defense, my favorite defense. Every position at the top has a stud. The question is, okay, what do your second and third options look like? That's where it gets tricky. James Conner not getting the touchdowns he used to, but I'm not concerned about him. Who I am concerned about, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper. As a whole, this is a solid wide receiver group, talent-wise at least, but McLaurin and Cooper situations just leave their ceiling a little bit lower. I traded both these guys that were both on my roster earlier this season. I drafted both of them. I traded them because I did feel like I was trading near the top. Amari Cooper back-to-back 100-yard games and a touchdown. It's just tough to go more than that when you're on that offense, that run-first offense. And Terry McLaurin, it's hard to go above what you've also seen in these garbage time points only because of the competition for targets and also not the best passing offense in the league. So every player kind of does deserve a start, but to win the Super Bowl, to win the fantasy league, you have to win consistently, especially in the playoffs. You need to put 2 or 3 wins together. And when you have such a volatile group, like kind of both these teams' wide receiver groups are now, given the injuries for Pain Train and given just the who Amari and Terry McLaurin are, it's hard for me to imagine, especially at 1 and 3, that they will have the consistency to make the playoffs and to win it all. But I think both teams are good, so that's where it's tricky. Like, I wouldn't want to play necessarily either of these teams. But given the 1 and 3 record, given the fact that the floor is so low, that's my concern about these two teams. But again, I think they're solid. I think every team is solid. I don't think there's any joke or easy win. So I think it's just a chase to glory hole, even though glory hole is only 2 and 2. I think everyone's kind of chasing glory hole right now, in my mind at least, and we'll see what happens. So cheers, everyone. If anyone's Jewish, hope you had a happy holiday. For everyone else who's probably this entire league, hope you win week 5. It's going to be almost impossible for each one of you to win week 5, but never say never. I love you guys. Give my life for you. I'm being dramatic.